The multiverse theory suggests that somewhere, as impossible as it may seem, you have a girlfriend. I know. What are the odds of that? Well, given the infinite amount of chances for any decision to have turned out differently, it is definitely, at least theoretically, possible. Every possibility, every asteroid interacting, every time you didn't spill something on your shirt going to talk to some woman at Starbucks, all create different outcomes in those individual universes. And that brings us to today's topic. As humanity are the big brainy brains on the block, say that 3 times fast, we would endeavor to open a window to other universes. However, in the build plans, the engineers thought it said door rather than window. Oopsie doopsies on that one. As a mysterious mist would pour through the doorway, I don't know how big this thing was, but clearly it would be rather large from what we will find out. Horrific creatures rushed through that doorway into our realm, and it would become apparent that this was kind of a situation that if not handled immediately, all of Earth's ecosystems would be summarily overwhelmed. A small town would be caught in the crossfire trying to survive the nightmarish creatures outside, which would result in very likely the obliteration of at least most of the townspeople. So in today's episode, I think it would be fun to talk about how biologically this is very likely a self-limiting problem, that once the portal was actually shut, even without human intervention, it's very unlikely these creatures' own bodies could even support themselves as we cover the movie The Mist, which has been requested like 1,200 million times on this channel. We kick off today's story with evidently a hat trick with these Stephen King films. As a man paints John Marston, a storm rages outside. The power then shuts off as across the way, the storm is going absolutely goblin mode. Hopefully, it's not letting in creatures that eat babies! The family then watches for a moment before choosing to head downstairs to the basement. Solid move. Though, does Maine actually get tornadoes? Because I know Alabama does, good lord. Also, apparently, this is the year where it snows in every state around us except for this one. Literally, right on the border of Alabama. Super neato, bro. I didn't want to see a snow day anyway. So pushing the atmosphere's twisted prank to the side, the tree is then knocked over, and the Marston painting is unfortunately totally destroyed. Looking at the tree and chucking the painting at it, they then hang out in front of their lake house property, surveying the damage. The youngling then runs over with a crazy amount of life and precociousness. Hopefully nothing horrible happens to him. Going to their boat dock, Norton's tree, who he's been asking for years for him to take it down, has crushed his boathouse, which means now it's insurance time. Joy bound. Evidently, the dad has had a property dispute with this guy for quite some time, so they're not exactly the best of friends. Kind of reminds me of one time I had this guy's tree fall in my yard, broke his fence, missed my house entirely, but poked a few holes in my lawn. This dude comes over at like midnight, freaking out in the middle of a storm, saying insurance would call it an act of God, so nobody's at fault. Like, brother, calm down. It landed on some grass. We ended up just splitting the firewood between us, but the sheer panic was absolutely wild to me. It's not that big of a deal. Anyhow, diplomacy with neighbors first is typically the way to go. They live right next to you, and I'm throwing way too many parties, or at least I did, to be at odds with them. They would have legitimate grounds for grievances otherwise. So as they look out, a fog, or as some would even call it, a mist of sorts, perhaps, is creeping down from the mountains. Ooh, scary. Although that does not look natural at all. I would have to assume that's some sort of chemical leak given the thickness of that fog. Anyhow, Dad of the Year is heading over to go say howdy to his neighbor to get the insurance information. Walking up on Captain Holt, he asks to exchange the info as the captain's car has also been destroyed in the storm. Given this circumstance, he then asks for a ride as they head into town as the linemen head down the road. Also, hold up. What is this dad driving? Brother, is that a Toyota FJ55? Makes sense that would be the vehicle to be utilized to survive interdimensional rifts, leading to literal monsters being let into Earth. I believe this is the 1968 model. Those are 3-speed manuals. And they came with the legendary 3.9 liter that gave you only about 125 horsepower. They were just 6-bangers, so nothing too wild. And they would actually only give you like 9 to 12 miles per gallon, which will be an issue later. And given it's the end of the world, though, a Land Cruiser would absolutely be the vehicle that you would want. Also, I had someone get upset that I talk about cars and apparently don't know enough about them to talk about them. Alternatively, shut up. That's about the most dumb thing I've ever read in my life. I'll tell y'all, don't let some nerd who knows everything about cars tell you can't jump into the culture of it. Everyone starts with 0 knowledge. I think I've acquired 12 knowledge at this point, and those metrics totally, hold up.
This is Chi-Chi, and for every donation that we get on our fundraiser, she shall get 1 cat treat. Go check out our GoFundMe for our short film to feed this delightful little fur baby.
Anyhow, Captain Holt then talks about how the crashed flying saucer up there at Project Arrowhead is probably what happened, as the military is also rolling down the road as well. Now, one must ask, is he being serious? I mean, where would we have gotten the potential portal tech? I'd like to think we developed it ourselves and didn't use some cursed Xeno advancements, but who knows? I also know we're about to drop the Star of Peace on Cyberstan, so go take care of the bot front. Anyways, getting to the store, the dad then leaves his youngling with Raymond as the phone is out. Heading inside the store, it's going absolutely crazy style, with Mrs. Copeland walking in next. That joke will make sense later, as she's already upset that the lines are long. Yes, the world does not revolve around you. Captain Holt then walks away as Dad of the Year's son asks if they're going to be friends. Well, no. Mending the fences more than anything, literally due to the property dispute. Some soldiers then walk in next as the military police comes in looking around. Finding the other soldiers, the cops and fire department drive by as the MP then tells them their leave has been canceled and he doesn't know why. Hanging out, the sirens then start going off to alert the town that they're straight up not about to have a good time, as a man then comes in yelling, "There's something in the mist!" as then he tells them to shut the doors. One guy then makes a break for his car as yelling can be heard as soon as the fog rolls over him. Like, really? That quick? Bit strange, isn't it? So wondering what it could be, everyone then looks out as Mrs. Copeland says it's death out there as the ground starts shaking earthquake style, scaring the holy hell out of everyone. Captain Holt then gets up, threatening to sue the entire planet as Mrs. Copeland says it's the end of days. Captain Holt raises his hand once more, saying surely someone is able to be sued here. Why did I use that joke twice? But he insists on it. A woman then crashes out as her 8-year-old youngling is at home alone. She asks if anyone will help a lady through the fog. No. For all you know, that air is toxic out there. Seriously, fog like that is thick beyond reasoning, which is usually a good thing, but for an aerial event, that is definitely not a good thing because it means there's chemicals in there. Heading outside, well, this looks terrible. She then disappears into the mist to totally not get got by interdimensional monsters. Dad of the Year's youngling then starts crashing out horribly as he says he wants his mom. Well, all you've got is your dad, although it's pretty valid. As everyone then just sits there talking to one another, as is standard with Dean Koontz books, they then break off into individual groups, forming the parent figure club over here. This guy really does be leaving his youngling with anyone, I guess. And then heading back to... okay. Carbon monoxide is just straight up leaking into this building, shutting off whatever that thing is. He then trips over everything. I mean, clearly it's a generator. I don't know why I was confused, but another group is also starting to form with Miss Copeland, who's sure not to cause problems later. I'd like to call it the God Squad, but that's not God. That's someone with an ego using God. So the Ego Alliance. As Dad of the Year then looks around, the garage door starts flexing as something begins banging on it. He runs out to the front and tells them he turned off the generator and then asks if anyone else heard that weird noise. Mr. Mechanic says he had a scare, as then they send Bag Boy to turn on the generator. Something has the exhaust plugged up outside though. Dad of the Year then says this is not some ordinary mist, so if they open the door and something gets in here, then it's a problem, like toxic air. Mr. Mechanic basically says you're a big baby and Bag Boy is ready to go fight tentacle monster out there. Bad plan, brother. So Mechanic, then threatens the Dad of the Year, and it's like, bro, you've had all of 14 seconds of exchange here. How are you already at your wit's end? Wernicke, Korsakoff syndrome, I think, but that's gonna come on strong. Anyways, it's called wet brain. Ascites, I also believe. It's basically when you drink too much and your neurons no longer function properly. But anyways, turning on the generator, Bag Boy then opens the garage door as they look. Yes, very strange fog. Bag Boy then stands up smirking as he's immediately grabbed by Tentacle Monster. Oh god! Anyways, trying to drag him away, the tentacles are basically covered in little mouths, which immediately begin snacking on him. Ouchies. Bag Boy then gets dragged but isn't able to hold on as the tentacles keep searching the area. Goated Cashier then gets to the generator as Bag Boy is dragged off with the Dad of the Year axing the tentacles a question. Amazing joke, I know. The Mechanic apologizes, saying nobody forced him to do that as Dad of the Year punches him for being so cavalier about what could be out there, reminding him that was a teenager. They're supposed to be stupid, and it's true. Frontal lobe isn't really all that developed, and the amygdala has way more control of the decision-making ability. I'm not making fun of teenagers. That is literally just what happens with teens. I used to be stupid too. It is bizarre. If you're a teenager watching this, there's gonna come a point on a random Tuesday afternoon where it's like you wake up and you're like, whoa. That's your frontal lobe developing enough. It's insane. It's like, do you remember when you first came into consciousness and you remember that moment? That's what happens as an adult when your frontal lobe finally makes its not last connection, but enough connections. It's like you just kind of look back and you're like, you know what, I've been chilling out over the years. That's weird. That's what happens. It's very strange. But so Mr. Mechanic not being an adult indicates he is in fact a chode at this point. So everyone's officially non-jazzed about this whole situation that they have going on here, as Dad of the Year tells them not to say anyone to anything. Let me try that again. Anything to anyone as the generator goes off again. Emerging from the back, my second grade teacher materializes to ask what happened. Ever wonder what your elementary school teachers are doing nowadays? Who knows? Everyone discusses how safe this place actually is, since the front of the store has giant glass windows, which is a valid concern. Dad of the Year then goes and gets Captain Holt and explains what's going on, as he's told it's true about the tentacles. He says he's just not that stupid, and he's shocked they would even try. He thinks that they were playing a trick on him. Dad of the Year says he's scared, and Captain Holt is scared too. Captain Holt is making a scene over this, saying he was just assaulted. Like, bro, calm down. As Dad of the Year then informs everyone of what is happening. Something, as stated, is in the mist. It's big, scary, and pink, and has mouth tentacles, which arguably probably should maybe just leave with that. What annoys me most about this is you can literally just go grab that tentacle in the back and then bring it to the front. However, disproving me almost immediately, they poke it with a stick, as it still has active nerves, and then it dissolves into nothing. Well, how apropos, I guess. Coming out, it appears they have a problem with the disappearing tentacles. So as the day continues, Mrs. Copeland is crashing out even harder, saying they can't all be bad and some can be saved. She believes most will swim in the lake of fire. Not really your call, lady. My second grade teacher then comes into the bathroom saying she needs to use the bathroom, as she tells Mrs. Copeland it's okay to be scared. And if you need someone to talk to, or maybe even just a friend, you can talk to me. Mrs. Copeland says, well, I don't need any friends. If I want any friends, I'll squat one out, and that'll be my friend. Comparable to you. I don't think she said that exactly that way, but close enough. I think the reality is you do need friends, you just can't make friends. Got him. Captain Holt keeps talking to everyone about what is happening and how ridiculous this is and how they need to discuss this rationally and find rescue or he will sue. Seems like everyone's starting to get a little upset. Maybe because their nutrition isn't in order. Do you think it could be that? Which is the perfect time to mention today's sponsor. But first, this episode is sponsored by Groons. Physical health is peak. I mean, mental health isn't bad. That's the thing to work on. But if you feel better physically, that has a cascade of positive consequences. Have you ever stopped to think about how much nutrition you take in actually during the winter when you're eating like crap? Well, since the holidays have just concluded and the fact that we're still in hibernation mode, our vitamin and mineral intake can slide. Groons is here to help you address that. Groons has over 20 vitamins and minerals with 60 ingredients that are nutrient dense and include whole foods. But they are way more than that. They contain 100% of the vitamins you need per day and 25% of the minerals you need per day. Plus, they're methylated. What does that mean? Well, cyanocobalamin is a synthetic B12 that, in me, actually triggers migraines. However, because Groons are methylcobalamin, that means you can actually absorb, well, I can anyways, the B12 without the threat of a migraine and enjoy the energy boost. Along with this same process, folate is methylated as well. Plus, Groons contains 3 times the amount of dietary fiber as the leading greens powder and contains both biotin and niacinamide for thicker hair, nails, and skin health. And I know a lot of us could use help with the skin thing during winter because all of our skin probably looks like crap. I actually switched from a green powder that I used to drink over to Groons and have an active subscription that I pay for myself because I like it that much, and I bet you will as well. So if that sounds good to you, then by clicking the link in the description, you can get up to 52% off Groons. Just click that link and start getting your vitamins and minerals consumption under control today. So stacking the dog food, Mrs. Copeland says everyone needs to prepare to meet their maker. Shut up. The mechanic keeps threatening her as he says he will go out there then and see how she does. Like basically take her out there, I guess. So she is going with the fire and brimstone god, Old Testament version, I guess. New Testament, bit different. My second grade teacher then slaps her as in the quarter, the soldiers are not interested in the slightest concerning helping the other men stack dog food as they just keep talking amongst themselves. Chad Cashier says she's unstable, mentioning, Mrs. Copeland, as the youngling then goes to ask the soldiers a bunch of questions. Yeah, guys, again, why aren't you helping them stack dog food? Get up! Anyway, so youngling asks Dad of the Year if he thinks that Mom is okay. I'm sure she's not strung up by spider webs. I'd bet your life on it, son. Wyatt Earp then mentions at this point that he has a pellet dispenser in his truck as my second grade teacher brandishes a handheld herself. Chad Cashier is apparently trained, as Captain Holt says this is not supernatural and he's just gonna go out there. Well, one guy did start violently screaming after entering the mist, so, even if it's not supernatural and there is no 67 Impala out there, maybe his lungs just turned inside out after breathing that in. It's always a possibility. So everyone tries to stop them, as Dad of the Year says, to tie some rope around the waist of Captain Holt so they can know how far he made it. The biker then says he will go for the pellet dispenser because they could actually use that thing from Wyatt Earp's truck, telling him he's got brass balls. You guys you got brass balls, son. Well, hopefully more of him returns than just that. Also, I don't really know if you could comparably call this biker son, because He's like the same age as you, as the Wyatt Earp guy. Anyways, tying it around the biker's waist, Captain Holt says nothing is in the mist as he walks out saying he's going to send back help and a declaration of lawsuit. That joke has run its course. Leaving with a few others, the biker then heads out with them as the main group then heads to the center of town, with Biker heading out the other direction. As they feed the rope, it goes slack. It then starts getting pulled stronger and getting rope burn, ouchies, holding it, or at least trying to. It goes up in the sky as then it breaks. Going to pull Brass Balls back, the rope is bloody. Then pulling back simply his lower half, that's not a great sign. They shut the door as Mrs. Copeland uses this as an opportunity to say, "Now do you believe?" Well, so far, we don't know if that's God or something else, so I'm pretty sure God doesn't tear people in half. Soldier Boy now goes to hit on Cashier Girl, as one does, as she asks him, "Why did you never ask me out?" Because apparently he's stupid. His words, not mine. Instead, they just make out, party at the end of the world scenario. And hiding behind the dog food, everyone just keeps looking out as giant bugs come to the window. They see the light geniuses, much like, moths, and they keep appearing. Turn off the light. These are like large bugs as well, which actually, interesting problem you have here. It may be self-limiting, which we will talk about later, but turning on more flashlights to attract more bugs, because why not? A giant thing then goes and attacks one of the bugs, breaking the glass. Going to turn off the lights, Bro in the back keeps turning on more lights because he's an idiot and communication is broke down. The glass finally starts breaking as one flies in with my second grade teacher smacking it. Cashier Girl gets stung in the neck as one of the larger creatures then breaks in chasing the bugs. One of the creatures straight up eats a dude's spinal erector muscles as the Cashier Girl flatlines out due to her interaction, probably an allergic one, with that venom because it's injected. One guy is lit on fire, what the hell, as they light the other flyer on fire and beating it with a stick like a caveman. Miss Copeland has one creature land on her as it sort of squares up and then flies away. Chad Cashier then takes out one of the flyers, but luckily lead still works as Chad Cashier finishes the job before it can attack the youngling. Okay, so there is one good thing about this entire process. While these bugs are absolutely annoying, at least there hasn't been one giant walking anglerfish type creature roaming the planet, so we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief. On the real though, we kind of will see that, and it still doesn't even compare to how ugly the anglerfish actually are. Like, even the depths of human imagination compared to the face of an anglerfish, just designed by nature itself, that exists in real life, it still isn't as hideous. Maybe this timeline is the timeline that these creatures fear, like we are the worst timeline, and we need to open a portal and flood their universe with all the anglerfish, monkfish, and muskies, I think they are, up in like Lake Kashagawigamog in Canada that we can find, and that'll be the culmination of humanity's revenge. So Cashier Girl is totally done so with Soldier Boy crying over it. Lord, everyone starts taking Mrs. Copeland's side now, joining the Eagle Alliance, as the body outside gets dragged off. Finally, the youngling is screaming about his mother as everyone then puts a candle next to some highly flammable objects, that being paper. Chad Shear then comes over to get Dad of the ear as he asks Two-Face how he's doing. Not well, it seems. He says he wants to be taken out as he's in extreme pain. With those burns, I feel like it's likely he wouldn't feel much, so why exactly? Well, burns are a bit funny that way. You actually apparently have, like, it goes all the way up to 6th degree burns, if you didn't know. But we're going to get into that. So 1st degree burns affect only the epidermis or outer layer of the skin. The burn site is red, painful, dry, with no blisters. Mild sunburn, for example. Long-term tissue damage is rare and usually consists of an increase or decrease in the skin color. 2nd degree burns involve the epidermis and a plane flying outside. As part of the dermis layer is, like, the skin is going to be burnt. The burn site appears red, blistered, and may be swollen and painful. 3rd degree burns destroy the epidermis and the dermis. 3rd degree burns may also damage the underlying bones, muscle, and tendons. The burn site appears white or charred. There's no sensation in the area since the nerve endings are destroyed. This guy would definitely have, at minimum, 3rd degree burns. 4th degree burn injuries occur when heat damage destroys the dermis and muscle tissue is affected, like 3rd degree burns. 4th degree burns result in scarring and loss of keratin, loss of hair shafts, and fingernails. If this burn is on the hand, and toenails if the burn is on the feet. Skin grafting is required and permanent motor damage may occur. 5th degree burn injuries occur when all the skin and subcutaneous tissues are destroyed, actually literally exposing muscle. These burns can be fatal due to the damage to major arteries and veins. 5th degree burn injuries may also require amputation due to damage to muscles. And if amputation is not needed, skin grafting will be required. You can also, interestingly, we found, put fish scales on it, like fish skin. It helps it heal for some reason. Permanent and prominent scarring with loss of keratin in the area and of where the burn is actually occurring. And 6th degree burn injuries occur when heat destroys the muscles, charring and exposing the bone. These burns are almost always fatal. If the fatality was caused by another person's negligence, then the burn victim's family is entitled to bring a wrongful death claim against the wrongdoer. If death has not occurred, You probably wish it would have, but amputation will be required. Why did I take the time to tell you all that? Well, because I love you. Anyway, so my second grade teacher keeps trying to wake up a woman, as in, apparently she just downed a bunch of pillies to shuffle her moral coil. That's really hard to say. However, they have a problem. A fully engulfed in flames man is in pain somehow, so they need pillies to stop his pain. So they need to go next door, grabbing the worst babysitter ever, and then put her in the back to have her stay there. Realizing they need to get Dad of the Year's Land Cruiser based, they realize Mrs. Copeland is starting to become somewhat of a cult of personality with the Ego Alliance. My second grade teacher keeps saying people are basically good. True, but in groups, they can be painfully stupid. And I'm included in that burn too. I'm human. The same stupidity resides in me like it does within you. Number one thing in life, understand you're capable of being an idiot. It will help you determine the times when you could act like a total idiot and maybe you should stop. So Mrs. Copeland then asks where Dad of the Year is going, as Mrs. Copeland says, they will bring the creatures with them. And she bases that on absolutely nothing. She starts trying to galvanize the group as the old lady then throws a can of beans at her. Soldier Boy then decides he should probably actually do something with his life, as then he joins the group heading out there. Immediately turning on the flashlights, truly brilliant, because that went really well earlier. Turning it off, the actual brilliant move. They then head over to the pharmacy. The doors were propped open for the day because it was nice when the mist came in. Entering the pharmacy, they immediately make a ton of noise by running into a shelf. Nice. And continuing their search, they grab the pillies for the Human Torch. As the old man says he hears something. Looking up, they find everyone is strung up in the webs. Mechanic freaks out as an arm then grabs him. The MP is strung up as he starts saying it's all their fault, and he says he can feel the creatures inside him. Spooters begin exiting out of his body as they find even more spooters in the area. Yeah, what an absolute nightmare that is. As webs are then shot out. And oh good, they're acid webs. Wonderful. One guy gets his leg totally melted down to the white meat as the MP is about to bust. Horrible phrasing. He then explodes open as one guy gets shot in the face with webs as the old lady burns one of the spiders. Mr. Crabclaw Spider then blocks the door as the old man stabs it and they go to run. Leaving behind legs over there, they get back to the store in a hurry as it's all bad times and loss of life. And we're about to find out this was totally not necessary. Mrs. Copeland then starts recruiting more to her cause as Dad of the Year wishes she would just shut up for a while. Also, the Human Torch flatlined them while they were gone, so that entire run was totally not worth it. The Parents Club wants to leave as everyone is starting to align with Mrs. Copeland's Ego Alliance, which that's not a great sign. Talking quietly about it, they need a GTFO as Mrs. Copeland continues preaching as they go to get supplies as Dad of the Year goes to talk to Soldier Boy. Confronting him about it, he says the MP seems to know what was going on as the group then heads to the back, but is spotted by the mechanic. Finding the other two soldiers just kind of hanging out, they decided they didn't want to be there anymore because they were bored. Dad of the Year then confronts him about the Project Arrowhead as mechanic then grabs him saying, he brought down the wrath of God, brother. Miss Copeland then grabs his throat, which, dude, come on, man, stand up. Cringe, dude. It's, I don't know, throw a haymaker. What in the name of all that's holy is this? Apparently there are worlds all around them and they wanted to make a window to see into them, but instead, crap, we made a door. Blame the scientist, not the grunt, TBH. I'm pretty sure this guy's like a private. I don't think he had anything to do with this. They wouldn't be telling bro anything anyways. He'd just be mopping. So a fight then breaks out as Soldier Boy is stabbed by the butcher with Miss Copeland, amping everyone up into a frenzy. Dragging Soldier Boy outside and then toss him to his fate, a creature then arrives behind him as he's picked up and taken out, leaving behind a bloody handprint. Miss Copeland saying the beast has been fed for today, but tomorrow they will just have to see. Yeah, you really don't know that thing's intentions. Shut up. Look, I don't want to make waves here, but at a certain point, you need to pull the weed out of the garden before it has a chance to spread and choke out the flowers. I just throwing that out there. Just gonna, yeah. Anyways, so as Dad of the Year then hangs out with his son, everyone lays down for the evening, being woken up by my second grade teacher, which doesn't sound right, grabs him saying it's dawn. That night, the group has gotten supplies together over at Lane 2, getting ready to leave. Looking around, the groceries, though, are gone. Miss Copeland asks if they are stealing food. He tells her to stand aside as she says she won't allow it. Prune the weed, now. She then drinks some milk, the most evil of drinks, as she says she is God's vessel and will enact his will. Very doubtful. Typically, people who claim that, something bad happens to them if, they're not supposed to. So everyone starts arming up as she says the sacrifice must come from them as they demand the youngling. Chad Shearer then pops Miss Copeland as everyone else backs up. Hell yeah, brother. That's what we've been waiting on. Yeah, baby. They exit the facility and then head towards the Land Cruiser, go-to vehicle. And as they move further into the mist, Chad Shearer then opens the doors up, but unfortunately, he gets bitten in half by the creature. Wyatt Earp then gets separated as the old folks, my second grade teacher, Dad of the Year, and the youngling all make it to the Land Cruiser. Wyatt gets eaten by some spiders as the manager then runs back to the store. As a spider crawls on top of the vehicle, it lost track of them. Thank God it doesn't have object permanence as they fire up the Land Cruiser and then head out. Driving past the store, take that, you nerds, they made it, which he definitely did this on purpose to show them the power of friendship and how they made it. Driving back home, that is some thick mist. The area is covered with spider webs as he sees his wife strung up. Bummer, bro. He never fixed the window, so the spooters got in. Having a nice cry? Well, I suppose just keep driving. Saying, let's see how far the fuel takes us. It's a Land Cruiser, so not very far. As they drive, they then pass a school bus, also bummer, as everyone on the highway didn't fare too well either. Continuing their trek, some giant thing walks by, I believe a tentacle monster. How it got past the power lines when it doesn't even appear to pick up its feet that much is beyond me. This thing is still not as bad as the anglerfish, and getting 5 miles per gallon, they indeed did not get clear of the mist as they come to a stop. Realizing there's only one option, well, two technically, they hear creatures outside the car. Checking how many rounds they have, everyone agrees it's time to check out what these other worlds are. Bro, no shot. Look, I get it's a hellscape, but at least try to survive, right? Give it a shot. You have no idea where you actually are or what you're next to. There could be a safe bunker for all you know. But not listening to Roanoke, because I believe I was 15 at the time watching this. He then takes out everyone in the car in a mercy. Stepping out of the car to deal with the creatures himself, he yells as in the military has shown up. The important part of this is you should never give up unless you're an absolute chode, clearly. Captain Holt drives by at this point, doing the finger pistols motion at the Dad of the Year, which in reality, even if he did survive, the Dad of the Year that is, there's no way he'd be alive for long. I do believe you would check out after this point because of this entire situation. The military then moves in, burning all the spooters as they are getting the fog out of the area. What was causing the fog? Good question. So Dad of the Year has a nice shriek on the ground because he waited all of like 14 seconds. He would have been good to go. And here's the thing. Okay, all I'm saying, right? Get out of the car yourself. Don't take everybody out. Just check your immediate area, right? Go see if you can. Maybe you're outside of like, I don't know, Spider Lane, and now it's just walking tentacle monster lane, which are too small anyways. That thing doesn't care about you. I'm just saying, like, it's like, did you want to take everybody out? Is that what it was? I don't know. And thus concludes The Mist. Did you enjoy it? Who knows? I remember watching a video on this actually that succinctly puts it into perspective. Even if something was a good movie, if it ends in a way that is too dark or leaves you feeling distraught, you'll never know if it was a good movie because your last thought of it is, well, that ended terribly. And to say that, I mean, I guess, I don't know, solid 5 of 10. Hello and welcome to the science portion. I started saying that one time and then all of a sudden I can't stop myself anymore. It's a real problem, send help. Apart from that, what can I say about interdimensional monsters that hasn't already been said about the anglerfish? It was man who was made in God's image, not you, creature. Literally, those things. Maybe Cthulhu's image? I don't know. Anyways, these things are a bit strange for a variety of reasons. That being said, they appear to actually be aquatic creatures, which is the only way these could actually persist in any capacity that they do, for the most part, at least on Earth. Like, they shouldn't be on land. And the ones that are running around that would look like they would still be able to survive probably wouldn't. So I think what we need to talk about is not only the square cube law, but also the atmospheric composition of our world and how, honestly, there's no shot it really links up as a hospitable place to these creatures long term because their own planet is completely botched. They are essentially on borrowed time from the moment humanity starts poking the combine with our portal technology. So let's begin with a discussion on our own ability to survive what is known as a low oxygen environment. Earth used to be more hospitable somewhat, depending on how you look at it, through a very specific lens. Sort of like how Count Chocula cereal is a part of a healthy breakfast if you look at it from only one specific angle. Anyhow, back in the day, about 359 to around 299 million years ago, the oxygen in the atmosphere was absolutely exploding, figuratively and sometimes quite literally. Around this time, it is known as the Carboniferous period, and you would be quite happy to probably not exist around this time frame. Of course, if you did, you could always just run away from your problems quite easily given the massive amount of oxygen you would have at your disposal. The oxygen levels were around 30 to 35% of the atmosphere, which is astronomically higher than today's level of 21%. This did several things for the animals that were alive in this time frame. First, oxygen was able to perfuse tissues more adequately and more deeply. Larger bodies could be achieved because of this, and diffusion distance increased. This led to one of the worst time periods on this planet. Like, look, dinosaurs could be creepy as all get out, I imagine, but they are nothing compared to the fact that there were literally massive predatory arthropods roaming the surface. 6-foot-long centipedes with massive pincers on their face. Giant proto-spiders, not really spiders, but close enough. Millipedes with thousands of legs, looking weird and disgusting as they walked and minded their own business. The leggy boys truly did rule the planet. But it was also around this point that the environment would just randomly catch fire, resulting in massive forest fires that would engulf half the planet, spurred on by the fact that there was so much oxygen in this environment. Every breath you take, you could wait half a minute and you would still be good to go. And I can hear you asking, well, that sounds good. All you have to do is conquer the bugs, right? Well, I'm here to tell you it's never that simple. This is the Earth we're talking about, which arguably our world, but the universe, it's our biggest hater, and unfortunately, it is undefeated in the parking lot. I mean, for humans, it would probably feel pretty good at first. All that oxygen entering your body would allow you to basically just breathe easier and less, and it would always feel like you could catch your breath even under physical strain. However, eventually, you would start to feel sort of unwell, to say the least. See, the problem is our air kills us. Ironic, right? Oxygen, while used in our metabolisms, is actually corrosive to our cells in a way that creates reactive oxygen species, or ROSs, as they're known, and they're also known as free radicals in more layman's terms. Antioxidants exist to solve this issue, or at least aid in it, but damage is still incurred regardless. Kind of a raw deal, isn't it? Our own air turning against us. Anyways, the cellular damage in your lungs is mostly the issue. As damage builds up, this creates inflammation in the alveolar sacs, leading to chest tightness, a dry cough, headaches, and visual disturbances. You need the air, but the air is killing you. Also, that thought is making you manually breathe now. That had happened. Eventually, oxygen toxicity, as it's known, settles deeper into your meat suit. You stop changing out carbon dioxide for the mega-saturated air. Your lungs pull a prank on you, bro, by filling with fluid. Neurologically speaking, you're not faring much better. As your nerves fire and you're dealing with more oxygen in the environment, risk of seizures increases, followed by confusion and poor coordination. It is at this point the leggy boys would most definitely find you and start picking you apart like the coconut crabs did to Amelia Earhart. But eventually, this would progress into actual damage to the heart if you manage to survive this long, as your blood vessels constrict and there is a reduction of oxygen to the heart tissue that results in a massive heart attack or stroke. You do not want to go back in time. But ultimately, actually, the issue with going back in time, if you really think about it, is if you had a time machine that exists literally at these coordinates in the past, you're just going to end up in space. So either way, kind of sucks. Anyways, but why then did insects survive in this environment? Because their own biology is cringe compared to ours. The entomologists are on sewer slide watch right now. Okay, it's not cringe, but they have something known as an open circulatory system, whereas we have the Chad closed circulatory system. In bugs, their body cavities are just open. They have ways to move the hemolymph around, usually just like simple muscular systems, inside their bodies, which can deliver oxygen that is dissolved within the fluid, but it is wildly inefficient. In high oxygen environments, due to this inefficiency, bugs could actually be larger as the hemolymph is more perfused and delivering that oxygen. However, in the year of our bug lord, 298.99 million BC, the oxygen levels began to dip. This would starve the bodies of the insects of oxygen, and as a result, not only was there a mass die-off taking place, which is pretty standard on Earth, but eventually, this led to them having smaller bodies in order to deal with the lower oxygen levels. Their bodies just could not handle the change and stay the size that they were. Eventually, a more efficient system would arise known as the closed circulatory system, which, would basically be the better system, but it does have its own pros and cons. Clearly able to deal with lower oxygen levels and more of a range of those levels. If it gets too high, you're still totally boned. Now, what does this have to do with any of this? The borrowed time, as mentioned earlier, is the most prevalent point I'm trying to make. What I believe we are seeing is an exceedingly localized event, essentially a high-pressure environment bleeding into a low-pressure environment, which actually makes a lot of sense why everything got blasted over here. So, let's start it up as this. When we open the door rather than window, it may seem a little strange that these creatures all ended up here. Why would so many arrive at all at once? That was a bad sentence. From a door opening. I mean, I get animals are curious about the world around them. That's how they find new food sources. But how exactly would so many of these all want to do the same thing? Unless our universes were literally meshed together for a moment and then materialized in this plane of existence, but I kind of doubt that. So then how was this accomplished? Well, the fun fact about a window versus a door is that a window is a window, and a door is a door. Thanks for watching. With the window, there is a barrier. With the door, there is not. Well, I guess the door itself is a barrier. This analogy is breaking down. It's an open door. So if the Biford dolphin incident is anything to go off of, I think what is happening is why we couldn't take like an axe to the power terminal to actually close this portal was because we forgot about this little thing called pressure differentiation. Oopsies! When we opened a portal to this universe, there are several context clues as to why exactly this happened. Given the size of these creatures and the fact that they must walk on land, we can assume very likely the oxygen levels in this environment are higher like they were during the Carboniferous period on Earth. But Roanoke! How do you know they were breathing oxygen? Because as I always maintain, for humanity and terminids to exist long enough to fight on the same planet for long enough, I don't know why I said it twice, they must both be breathing oxygen levels that are at least near similar to one another. The same must be true here. If they were breathing a different gas, then that gas would overwhelm everyone, leading to their suffocation. And I can also hear you, but Roanoke, what about nitrogen? Nitrogen is not good for your metabolism at all. It's not good for any metabolism. It takes, I believe, nitrogen into, you know what? I'm going to fact check myself, but I'm pretty sure it's triple bonded. Turns out I'm absolutely correct. Into, or nitrogen combined with another nitrogen, is triple bonded. That takes so much energy to break, it is insane. Whereas oxygen, O2, is double bonded, which takes less energy to break, and then you can actually use it. So, like, that extra bond, I don't know, man. The best way I can say it is, like, it's the difference between like breaking a string versus breaking like a cable of equal size, right? It's just so much more together. And that was probably really loud. I heard myself talking there for a second. But anyways, the point is that triple bond means that you're going to put in more energy than you're actually going to get out. So as far as metabolism is concerned, it is not a good situation to run off that. And also, still though, if you have this much more nitrogen coming into the environment, it's still going to suffocate people. So basically, humanity acts as the litmus test for what the air is actually composed of. The creatures arriving just brought a piece of their oxygen from their atmosphere with them. The other context clue we can look at is the mist itself. It is known that in higher pressure environments, while not across the board, fog or a mist can form because air density is increased as well. So as these air molecules are more tightly packed together, this makes it easier for water vapor to condense into tiny droplets. High pressure can also trap moisture near the ground, and in large systems like the atmosphere, which is comparatively lower, versus wherever these abominations come from, their own atmosphere clearly has a higher pressure. So let's assume it's like two Earths, which we'll talk about their planet here in a moment, but even if it was a 1 atmosphere on Earth versus a 1.1 atmosphere on this other world, Earth 2 possibly, I guess you could call it, because of this small point, the sucking force would be astronomical, just like with your mom. As the entire weight of 1 atmosphere pushes through a doorway that I guess must be large enough to transfer that giant creature at the end that walks by, this would still be tiny by comparison to the whole atmosphere of a planet. And I mean, there's that one thing, okay, there's like this crab, somebody put Mr. Krabs voice over it, where he's like talking about money, and then he gets sucked through a pipe because it, like the weight of the ocean is pushing on this crab, and then it was just this little tiny point it had to go through. Anyways, that thing got pulverized. But anyways, this is going to do several things. First, anything in the immediate area is pulled in and blasted a fair distance. There are probably a lot of dead creatures from this world strewn across the immediate area on our world by this event. However, other creatures potentially further out from the doorway would feel a slight draw at first. That may get stronger as they are eventually sucked in and blasted into our world, and just by happen chance, they manage to survive. The mist that likely exists commonplace on their world, given how easily they move about, may be amplified by the fact that now it exists in a lower pressure environment, being Earth original. Also, it could be that this mist never even existed in the first place, but by its atmosphere spewing through this doorway into our atmosphere, that's when the mist now exists. But as this fog moves across the world, it's literally the atmosphere of this other world trying to equalize the pressure on our world. So it's not some malicious thing, it's just an atmosphere combining and pressure equalizing. Eventually, this sucking force would stabilize, which at this point may have actually already happened enough to get close, but it's very doubtful. So when the portal opened, the force would be insurmountable. You could not get close to that thing at all. Now, it's unknown what the earthquake was at the beginning. It could have just been that thing walking, but the fact that it only lasts a few times and then stops says to me the military blew up the portal. They couldn't get close to it at first, but eventually they either sent in like a hell bomb or something of sorts that detonated the portal machinery that stopped it from keeping that doorway open. Of course, inquiring minds wish to know why they would make a portal so large that it could just let in that thing. You could have just made a human-sized door, in which case nothing massive could get through. It would just, of course, something massive could have got through. It just would have been totally liquefied. But it seems that probably would have been more intelligent, but then again, they didn't hire me onto Project Arrowhead. I think at some point, Stephen King is probably going to come break my legs if I keep poking fun at his creations. But anyhow, the damage was already done at this point. But then, how long would this take to stabilize? I'd have to call a physicist for that one, but what I do know is you can have locally higher pressure systems and oxygen levels, but eventually it will equalize. Think of like low pressure storm systems resulting in, storms and also migraines for some people, or high pressure systems resulting in clear skies. The same can be said for this event. Eventually, localized higher oxygen levels and pressure would cause the creatures to actually die off. So, let's talk about that because they suck. We could exist on their planet, they can't exist on ours. So given that these are very clearly insectoid creatures of sorts, while we can never assume their biology is the exact same as the creatures on Earth, we can't, I guess collectively, but I can. These are insects, and given the hypothesized atmospheric composition is tolerable to humans, but creates a mist possibly indicating a higher pressure, and how everything near the portal got sucked in, I'm going to go out on a limb and say these creatures have an open circulatory system, or at least some of them do. The insects that sting most definitely do. When they get squished, they very clearly have hemolymph leak out of them. The flyers, on the other hand, are also an indicator of higher pressures as their wing size versus actual body size would not be an aerodynamic enough build capable of being sustained on Earth to allow flight. It's sort of like how if we put wings on humans on this planet, we can't fly, but if we were on Titan, given the fact that there's lower gravity and a higher atmospheric pressure, we actually could fly. So, while they can maneuver in the mist as soon as the pressure equalizes, they are totally screwed. However, given the shot that Chad Shear takes and that puts it down, we see that it does actually have an iron-based blood, and this creature in particular has a closed circulatory system, which the iron-based, again, confirms oxygen. This means they could potentially survive the pressure equalizing over time, but they would lose their ability to fly entirely, and they would be constantly gasping for air. Makes it easier to hunt those things down, actually, and get it off our rock. Now, since we have an understanding that eventually this process will self-limit, this means all the spiders, given their body size, would succumb. Thank God. And the flying scorpions also eat dirt. Understand that they would have no time to adapt either, whereas the Carboniferous coming to an end was a slow event, allowing for the biology of insects to adapt. This event for these creatures would be over just probably a few more days. So the oxygen levels would dip, the pressure would equalize with Earth's, and eventually that would leave only the closed circulatory system creatures as even still remotely viable, but even then, they would be struggling to breathe. So alien meat is back on the menu, boys. Now, one of the things we do need to talk about is Cthulhu at the end. Now, we have several issues with this thing existing here, but it continues to tell us about the world, actually. First, what we are likely dealing with is a world that is considered to be a super Earth, and not the based super Earth that humanity controls, which again, please go to the bot front and take out Cyberstan, so I don't have to. I hate fighting bots. And I can't imagine how bad it's going to be to try to take over that planet. I just want to wear heavy armor and not be ragdolled for 12 minutes straight. Anyhow, the concept of a super Earth is that the Earth is larger than our Earth. Ironically, if the planet itself was, say, 2 times the size of Earth, but only had about 1.5 times the size of the mass, or size of the mass, 1.5 times the mass, then actually the gravitational pull on the surface would be lower than Earth's. And this would actually allow for larger creatures to exist. As we have established, like with the flyers themselves, closed circulatory systems do exist as well as open circulatory systems like here on Earth. If we take into consideration that the sauropods, for instance, back in the day, got to a height of around 60 feet or so with Earth's higher gravity and lower oxygen in the atmosphere, then we could realistically explain this creature. Sauropods were big guys with the long necks who had like the aforementioned height of about 60 feet or so and measured around 125 feet in length. They were also heavy as all get out, weighing 60 to 75 tons. In heathen units, I think only like 14 people use it worldwide, but I still care about you. That's 15 to 20 meters tall and around 35 to 40 meters long. Clearly, this creature is way taller and larger than a sauropod though. So given the trees around it and the fact that it's hideous and I don't want to look at it that long, I would have to assume this creature is anywhere from about 300 to 500 feet tall. It's hard to really get a read on it from this angle, but I'm sure there is someone on this channel who could properly calculate its height based on the angle. Also, in non-freedom units, that's 90 to 150 meters tall. Its weight would be astronomical, which actually is the crux of the problem here. The square cube law exists because physics exists itself. This is why I can't be 100 feet tall and swole. The universe literally stops me because it fears humanity. Essentially, the square cube law states you cannot scale something up without changing its design because weight grows faster than strength. And remember, we're all made of meat. Think of it this way, every muscle fiber must pull on another muscle fiber in order to move skin, bone, blood, and other muscle. As the creature gets larger, that is more weight that the muscle must move. Eventually, it becomes so heavy that more muscle is needed in order to just move that weight. But as more is added on, eventually more muscle is needed to even just move that muscle. A tipping point is reached where the muscle can no longer even move itself because it's too heavy. It's sort of like sending a rocket up into space. The more fuel you have, the more fuel you need to move that fuel because it's heavy. So of course, long before the bones themselves would even be able to support this weight, they would totally snap. Like, this thing's bones are snapping. No shot it's walking around. So basically, at a size bigger than an elephant on land, with our current atmospheric composition and gravity, the animal will become too large and die. Along with this, heat dissipation goes completely out the window, so it would overheat. But as we look at this creature, we can actually see this may have been accounted for. Given its relatively small center mass compared to its legs and the tentacles on its body, it's likely these operate as a radiator of heat, allowing it to stay cool somewhat in its environment. This further confirms the closed circulatory system idea, as blood is pumped through these tendrils. This would almost all but confirm the idea that these creatures originate from a super Earth with a thicker atmosphere. With the lower gravity, it's not too difficult to imagine that these creatures would be like the sauropods of their world, but the issue is they're no longer on their world. And this is the kind of breakdown of this whole idea. Once being brought onto Earth, it's miraculous that these things could even stand up, because let me tell you something, no shot. The issue is larger creatures still exist on Earth, but in the ocean. For this creature to exist at all, it needs the thick atmosphere and low gravity. Earth has neither to the degree that it needs, and as such, even with the marginally thick atmosphere, it would still be crushed under its own weight because Earth is dense. Ultimately, these creatures, as mentioned, are on borrowed time. I forget which comet it was that blew up in Earth's atmosphere like 100 years ago. Maybe it was in the 1400s. I can't remember. But anyways, the people that wrote down the information on it, they said for a few days, the sky would actually glow, and that could be seen during the evening. Like, when you take that much ice and gas and then put it in one area, for a little while, it will stay, but eventually it dissipates. After the portal was closed by several hell bombs sent in to make sure the job was done, which is likely what kind of shook everyone at the store, because if it was the creature walking, it wouldn't arrive suddenly and then just stop suddenly. It would basically build up, and you can kind of feel it sort of like the T-Rex walking, and then it would do the same thing later. So anyways, then the localized higher pressure system is going to dissipate, that was inspired by the initial atmosphere coming into contact with our atmosphere. So then finally, what was the deal with the fire getting rid of it at the end? Okay, we're just gonna talk about this. Burning everything consumed, I'm assuming, the oxygen that was in the environment, not to an extreme degree, but enough that would cause the water to dissipate as well, and the oxygen to be consumed in the reaction. Now, would this get rid of the fog that quickly? Probably not. But hey, that thing walking around violates the square cube law anyways, so why don't we just assume it did? But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. I feel like I could take Stephen King in a fight if he shows up and burns down my house, but that remains to be seen. If you did enjoy, then please leave a like and a comment, as it'll help get the video out there. Otherwise, you're a huge dork. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Instagram, Roanoke Tales link, and Patreon in the description if you'd like to support the channel. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the astronaut tier, we have Kusith and Lipsy Genji. Thank you guys for your awesome support. At the astrophysicist tier, we have Death Dancer, Mayura, and Webtron Supreme. Thank you guys as well. And at the scientist tier, we have Frank Shack Crank, Some Big Nerd, Metric System, Invictus Echo, Official Texan, The Homeless Guy on the Street, Jason, and Gina Elaine. Thank you guys as well. And the rest of my patrons, I really do appreciate y'all's support. You're absolute ballers, so thank you, because you don't have to help, but you do. Haha! Fantastic. But okay, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.